Just leave it, let it play out a little bit. I love this song. This band is from Regina, Saskatchewan. They're called the Dead South. It's really hard to find a unique sound nowadays. And these guys are really cool. They describe themselves as rock without drums and bluegrass without a fiddle. And they sing a lot of songs kind of like parody, and their harmonization is really unique. So anyways, I thought it was kind of a cool song to walk up to, and just thought I'd put that plug in for them. All right, so good job on pronouncing my last name. So I'm Steve Watrickish from Lloydminster, Alberta. For those that can't say Watrickish, I tell them you say white licorice, and then you slur it to Watrickish, and you're pretty close. In 2023, it was January, it was my turn to do like a health and safety share for one of the management team calls. And I chose to do it on mental health because it was coming on the tail end of Mental Health Awareness Week, which is in January. And I chose that topic because of the week we were in, and because I was in a bad space, really bad. I promised Sean I wouldn't swear. So I felt like a bag of organic fertilizer. And it's the hardest thing I've ever had to recover from, by far. So what I'm going to do here is it's been a process. It's hard to recover from because the process is really slow, and it's excruciatingly painful. You can't really compare it, I don't think, to anything else. So what I'm going to do is, I don't like to talk about myself because it fuels my pride. But I'm going to insert myself a little bit here in terms of this journey that I went on and sort of what happened. Okay, so for those that know what I'm talking about, there's lots of people in the room that'll just be able to relate. This will help maybe articulate kind of some of the things you've gone through and maybe help you in whatever stage of recovery you're in. And for those that don't get it, that haven't experienced this, guarantee you know somebody who does. And the objective for this is just kind of go beyond awareness and actually into understanding, so that, people that deal with mental health problems, you can actually understand it on a true, deep sort of physical level. So that would have been my goals. By the end, that's kind of where I want to get to. So here's what I'm going to hit on in terms of contents. And I guess, chairs, just make sure I stay on time. That's one thing I'm worried about here, is going over. I'm going to hit on sort of the biology, again, getting into this understanding behind mental health. I'm going to talk about it in terms of injury and illness. We often say mental illness, but I think it's as much an injury as it is an illness, but even sort of demystify that a little bit. I'm going to talk about sort of the causes of decline, let's say. And that's overload. That's the general term, but the types of overload that can lead to that accumulation of stress that leads to a misfire. I'm going to take you through a little bit of we're not going to do the experiment here, but I'm going to give you an experiment to try, especially those that don't know what I'm talking about, so that you can understand the severity, and then the process for recovery, sort of how I got through all that stuff. All right, so that's what I'm going to hit on. Okay, so biology. We got two primary types of nervous systems in our body. The voluntary one's the easy one to understand. Okay, that's what controls our blinking. It's what controls my body movements. Tells me, I'm able to hold my breath or breathe out. Controls, things. It's easy to relate to. It's the things that we have control over. But then there's the autonomic nervous system. And it's responsible for things like all the unconscious actions. It's out of our immediate control. You can't control it. You can certainly influence it. You can manipulate it through different thoughts or external stimulus, but it's not under your immediate control. So I'll give some examples later. And you can sort of, we describe mental toughness as being able to push through that, especially like, I know Chris Legg does adventure racing. That would be a good example of when your body's screaming at you to quit and you can kind of push through that. We would call that as mental toughness, but you can't control that screaming to stop. So some examples would be our emotions. Sometimes when someone tells a joke and you just immediately burst out with laughter, like that's part of that autonomic nervous system. It just happens. Or, you get angry at something, that immediate response. Sometimes it's really beyond your control. You can control what you do afterwards. Body temperature. I run hot. I know lots of people run cold. I run hot. I'm actually quite cool right now, but lots of times you'll see me I roll my sleeves up because I'm warm all the time. My veins kind of stick out. The senses, our 5 senses, that's all autonomic. Pain, like the pain response, physical sensations, like you can't control it. It's there or it's not. Even phantom pain sometimes shows up. Our adrenal system, our hormone system. So adrenaline, cortisol, all those things kind of governed by this autonomic nervous system. Hunger, pain, I'm hungry all the time, it feels like, and I shouldn't be, but hunger, that sensation, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, that all comes off this system that's beyond our control. Even like our bladder, it's like, I gotta go. And so that's another thing, it's there. You see little kids and it's like, all of a sudden it hits them like, oh, I really gotta go. And they sprint to the washroom. Things we're attracted to, it's got to be beyond our control, and even cravings. So that's part of that autonomic nervous system. So that includes kind of our alarm system, the things that, we feel kind of in a weird spot, something doesn't seem right, that's, again, part of that system. And again, you can't control it. Thoughts and stimulus can influence it. Okay? So we'll call mental health injury or illness occurs when there's a misfire, because it's normal when a situation kind of isn't right to feel a little anxious. That's normal. The misfire occurs when we're talking about mental health when it goes off and it ought not. Kind of like this morning, there was an alarm bell. There was a fire alarm, but there was no fire. Okay? So it's a way to understand that. It's like we've got this built in. It's normal. There's a normal response. And I'll take you through an experiment later. But it's when it starts to misfire is when, that's how I would liken it to an illness in terms of an autoimmune disorder. People, we're familiar with those like celiac disease, for example. Okay, or where you have that the immune system's not working correctly. That's how it would relate like an illness for me, and more like an injury because it's the stress and overload that can lead to that cause. So hopefully that's making sense so far. But it's a misfire when we get into this mental health concern. Okay, so how will it manifest itself? What does it feel like? It's like, here's the best words to describe it. It's like a physical torment. There's sort of a mental anguish that just doesn't want to go away. And it really impedes your thinking. So I think this is a part where I wanted to just give you guys an experiment. So this is more for the people that don't know what I'm talking about. And probably at least, I would say it's like half the room. Okay, so tonight, this is an experiment to do, not just to think about, but actually do. So tonight when you go to bed, you're lying there. What I want you to do is hold your breath for as long as you can. Okay? And then, so like when you hit like the 30-second mark or so, you're going to like start feeling a little uncomfortable. And I want you to pay attention to where you feel it. You're going to feel it like in your gut or in your chest or maybe your tailbone. And but you're going to kind of push through it. And then another 10 seconds will go by and it's going to start feeling a little more uncomfortable. maybe another 10 seconds will go by, and it's going to be like unbearable. Your alarm system is going off. It's like, I need air. It's doing its job as it ought to. Okay, that's your anxiety system, that adrenaline system doing it, working as it ought. Okay, and then when you can't take it no more, let your breath out. And then kind of reflect back, and you'll notice that there's like a scale of intensity. It's like 1 is like, okay, it's noticeable, and 2 is I can't bear it no more. Okay, so that's part 1. Part 2 is you're going to do it again. And this time, okay, you're going to notice it, you're going to hold your breath, and you're going to plug your nose and like not give yourself air. And then I want you to think of a math problem. Okay, like algebra or something like that, and see if you can solve it. It really, when that alarm system, that adrenal system is firing, it's really hard to think in a rational sense because it's blocking that off. Okay, and eventually you'll let it go and you'll realize it's really hard to do. And then when you're in that state, when it's wrapped up, it's hard to think. Okay, then we'll do it one more time, I think. And this time you'll hold your breath for as long as you can. You're going to notice the scale of the intensity. You're going to notice where you feel it in your body. And then you're going to let it out. And this time, after you let it out, you're going to notice, not going to notice, but you're going to imagine that it doesn't stop. That the pain's still there. And it lasts for another 2 hours. And it maybe finally goes away and you're just amped right up because your adrenaline system is just going off the charts. Okay? Or you wake up in the morning the next day and you feel pretty good. And then for no reason at all, it just ramps up again. And it lasts for 4 or 5 hours. And sometimes it lasts all day. And you don't know why. So it kind of gives you a sense of what it's like. And that's again, that autonomic part of the system, that autoimmune disorder, I'd liken it to in terms of a mental illness. Okay? So, and then imagine that for some people like that, and this occurs for months, every day. And it's like, shit, why is that happening? Damn it. Sorry, Sean. It goes for months, and then it's like, okay, when I'm in bed, I don't feel the pain. It's like the things that used to give me joy don't anymore. When I get up, it starts to hurt. Okay, and it's a real anguish, and so that's kind of the sensation. And you can see when this may lead to those with maybe mental health illness that leads to addiction. It's like the drugs make the pain go away, and it's the only thing that works. So that's kind of how things can manifest itself. So that's maybe how it feels part. So hopefully that is helpful. All right. So I mentioned that this mental health disorder, that's the wrong word. Disordered when it comes to that alarm system going off when it ought not. That would be like a disorder. It's ordered towards working, and if it's working overtime and shouldn't be, then that would be the disorder side. But it's often, I would say, brought on by the accumulation of stress, and it comes in the form of overload. So overload is the general term that I've selected for this, and I put down a list of examples of things that can cause that overload. It's not an exhaustive list. I know there's things up there. These are some of the things I experienced, but also there's some things I was like kind of deduced. So fatigue, that's just like going all the time. It's like you don't ever get a break. You're just going from one thing to the other. And so like, for us in the room, that full-time careers, you got young kids and they're in sports and they're in activities, and then you got a farm on the side and you got a coach and you never get a break. Or, it's like going to the gym, working out 5 hours a day, every day. Eventually that catches up with you. The fatigue catches up. So that's what fatigue is. Exhaustion is not being able to rest or recover. So that comes in the form of sleep and nutrition. And so you got to be able to sleep, but it's like going to the gym and then staying up all night and not sleeping. That's the exhaustion side of things. And so there's an accumulation there. Misalignment. This is probably the most misunderstood one, I think. It didn't come to me for quite a while into sort of the processes I was going through things. So this is, in general terms, it's when the trajectory of your life is going a different direction in terms of what you value. And that can be in all different kinds of forms. Okay? So, like for myself, I was already really busy. I was super busy. And then I bought a gym. I bought into a gym and I was even just more busy. And then I had a few employees dealing with some pretty serious issues, and I kind of carried that burden. And then I got, the end of my son's football career happening. And then I got, I'm running kids all over, and I got to take on the head coaching role for my son's hockey team because there's no head coach. And then I got sick. I got sick in November. So it was actually just after this meeting in 2022, it would have been. I was riding high, but then I got sick. I was sick for 6 weeks, and I was just downplayed. It's like, I'll get through it. I'll push through it. No problem. I got this. Set them up, knock them down. I want to listen to that podcast. It's going at 1.5 speed because I got to get through this and get on to the next thing. And so there's the exhaustion side, but that misalignment side is like, nope, I skipped out hunting. I didn't go fishing. And I kind of look back and then like, holy shit, there's no money at the end of the month. Darn it, I swore again. Okay, darn, there's no money at the end of the month. I make a good living. Where's all our money going? The price of food has just doubled. I can't even enjoy a good T-bone steak anymore. And so that's kind of that misalignment. And it comes in lots of different forms. It comes in the forms of the person I said I'd spend the rest of my life with. We've just separated. Like, it comes in lots of different forms. Trauma, didn't experience this one, but trauma, something just brutal happens. Something brutal happens. Abuse, the accumulation of abuse from someone else can be mental abuse, verbal abuse, bullying, all kinds of stuff like that accumulate. Certainly disorder. I can't say I know a lot about disorders, but certainly, we hear about it in sort of the media in terms of, psychological disorders actually being diagnosed. Predisposition. I didn't think I had this, but I think I do. Again, I run hot. I sleep terrible. I definitely have a sleep disorder. A normal night's sleep for me is up. At the time, probably 10 times a night. Now it's more like 5. So it's still not bad. I sleep way better, but sleep has been a problem for me for a long time. But certainly have that predisposition, and I gotta my bladder says I gotta go pee all the time, but I really don't. Deep loss. So that's probably more like a family member. I can't imagine anything more painful than loss of a child. That would be just brutal. That would be like that trauma side. Inflammation, a little bit of science around it. It's not conclusive, but you think of when you have a headache and you take an aspirin. Well, that headache is autonomic, but just inflammation around the autonomic nervous system causing a little bit of that physical manifestation. And then major events. So that's like, just had a baby. Now I got to take care of this thing, and I don't know what I'm doing. So major events. Retirement is another one a lot of people face. The prospect of retirement, it's scary. So those are the ones that kind of deduced. I'm one of the things I like strength training. I like coaching. I like the accumulation of skill. This kind of gets into the recovery side of things for myself, but I want to get to the point to understand how overload can occur. So I'm going to use this in the context of strength training, but this works for learning how to play the drums. This works for learning how to, any new skill. The process for becoming really good at something is the accumulation of small adaptations over time. That's what this chart demonstrates. It's from the book Starting Strength, Barbell Training, and it's based on the work of Hans Selye. So Dr. Hans Selye, this is in the 1930s. I think he was a Canadian scientist at his paper on general adaptation syndrome. So what this describes, and I'm going to talk about it in terms of strength, or the accumulation of strength, is we've got those dashed lines there represent your baseline level of strength. Call it homeostasis, equilibrium. And if I want to get stronger, I'm going to do a workout, and I'm just going to focus on the squat. It's the best strength exercise there is. But I'm going to go to the gym and teach someone how to squat, and we're going to pick a weight where the barbell starts to slow down. We'll call that the work set weight. You do your work set weight for 3 sets of 5, and you call it a day. Okay? You're going to leave the gym. So that's this point here. You leave the gym fatigued. You're a little bit weaker than you were when you first started because you've fatigued the system a little bit. But you go home, you eat, you rest, you have a great sleep, and 48 hours later, there's a new baseline of performance. So that's what that second dashed line represents. A new level of homeostasis. So if I want to drive that strength adaptation in myself or the person, I need to increase the stress. Okay, so I increase the stress. We squatted 135. The first workout, we're going to squat 145. We're going to go up a little. We're going to go up like 10 pounds initially. Same thing. Hit the squat workout, 3 sets of 5. Leave the gym, a little bit more fatigued. Sleep, eat, recover 48 hours later. We're going to hit that again, but now you're adapted to, instead of 135, you're now adapted to 145. Well, we're going to increase the load again, just a little bit, not too much. If I put 50 pounds on the bar, it's too much stress. You either won't do it or you won't recover from it. So you just put a little bit of stress on. Okay, so we're going to go, instead of 145, we're going to go 150. 3 days later, we're going to get an extra day of rest. 3 days later, we're going to put 155 on the bar. 2 days later, we're going to put 160. And again, we're going to put 165. And it's that accumulation over time. And initially, it ramps up nice and linear. And you can accumulate a lot of stress. The average male can do that process for anywhere from 3 to 9 months. An average male, like 4 months. So 15 pounds a week, 60 pounds a month, 4 months, you've added 240 pounds to your squat. So a 135 squat is now a 375. Okay? After a period of time, that's going to begin to slow down where you can't recover. So recovering from 375 for 3 sets of 5 is a lot different than recovering from 135 for 3 sets of 5. And again, it becomes too taxing. It becomes too taxing to recover from to add 380 to the bar. You just can't quite get there. So in programming, we call this the intermediate phase. Just like learning a new, all the basic guitar chords, now you're going to learn some complicated riffs. Okay, it takes a little more time to learn complicated riffs than just basic rhythm. So what we do is we spread that stress out over a week-long period. Instead of adapting every workout, we're going to adapt every 3 workouts. So what it would look like on Monday, I'd put a heavy stress on that client or myself. I'd hit it for 5 sets of 5, but at a slightly lower weight than I was at when I kind of ended that linear progression. Instead of 375, I'd go 5 sets of 5 at like 340. It's a taxing workout. That last set of 5 is pretty difficult. Wednesday, I'm pretty bagged. That's a heavy load. It's hard to recover from, but I'm stretching out that stress period over a period of time. Wednesday, we're just going to go a light day just to keep moving. Friday, we'd go heavy. We'd go that's where we'd hit 380 for a set of 5. We'd go up 5 pounds a week. Next week, we do everything again, but increase by 5 pounds. And over time, we can run this for years, frankly. You can run that progression for years. And eventually that runs out. So that would be like an intermediate athlete. You can run that, to a 595 squat. Big nut, like amazing gains. Okay, eventually that starts to run out. And so this would be like for the advanced, the really like the strongmen you see on TV or the Olympic lifters you see in the Olympics, where their training schedules are in 6-week blocks. So they have to put an amazing amount of stress on the system just to realize a small display of strength. So this is where they're doing 10 sets. And if they do 11, they've overtrained. It's a really fine line. I've never been to this stage of my training career, and nor do I even know anybody that is. It's really rare to get here. But I'm going through this because this helped me understand the overload that led to my mental health decline. So graphically, it looks like this. Again, this is an asymptotic curve. it describes a lot of things in nature. That could be the speed of an object. It approaches the speed of light, but it can never achieve the speed of light. So the top line there, the dashed line, would be the physical potential. Initially, there's that novice effect where you can just get better every workout. A hockey player gets better almost every hockey practice when they're early in their career. And then as it gets more and more advanced, it gets more and more difficult to accumulate that skill. The intermediate stage flattens out a little, or it rounds out, and then it's very flat in that advanced stage. When you get to the advanced stage, you're really susceptible to overtraining, even in the intermediate phase. And this is the part that kind of comes back to the mental health thing, is I mentioned earlier, 10 sets of 5 is the right amount, 11 is too much. And if that gets accumulated, you start to fall off a cliff. And so I want the senior leaders to pay attention to this. And those of you that have tons of things going on in your life, you're adapted to a lot of stress. I think I was too. Lots going on. But when the overload accumulates to too much where your recovery resources can't account for it, stress comes in all different kinds of forms. Like it would affect your squat workout even though you've got a mental stress going on here. When it accumulates so much over time and it becomes unabated, you can fall off a cliff. Like the drop in performance is severe. So I'm going to read this verbatim. And this realization came to me kind of well into my recovery process. But I'm going to read this part that was underlined verbatim. It says, diagnostic signs of overtraining in non-novices are severe. When finally apparent, obviously compromised performance, disrupted sleep, increased chronic pain, abnormal mood swings, chronic elevated heart rate, depressed appetite, weight loss, and other physical and mental abnormalities. In fact, these are the same physical symptoms characteristic of severe depression, a clinical problem arising from the accumulation of unabated stress. Okay? So that physical world and that psychological world, they cross over. And that misalignment can be part of that stress when you don't see the way out of something that you got yourself into, especially. Sometimes you can see the end of it coming and you can grind through it and you feel that anxiety, but there's that relief coming. But sometimes when we don't see that end coming, that really accumulates and it knocks you down, and so it's pretty severe. So that was a strong realization for me. So recovery, how am I doing for time, by the way? We're still good? Okay. So recovery. Here's kind of things that worked and what didn't. I'm sure there's other things here. It certainly requires your participation. There's a level of grace here, but grace requires participation. It's not like pixie dust that just kind of goes on you and you can fly away. So it requires, your involvement. Talk therapy for me was the most effective. I waited too long to go to this step. But it was, Tyler told me something. He says it's cathartic, and he uses these great big words that I never know the meaning of, but it's kind of cathartic because you get it out and it sort of gives an endpoint to it. Meds, they ease that adrenaline. My adrenaline system was going for 20 hours out of the day. The benefit was when I would go for a conditioning workout, it was amazing. I'd never had that much energy. I could not make myself physically tired. My adrenaline system was going literally 20 hours a day would be my guess. My cortisol levels, the stress hormone though, on the other hand, were so high. So the reference range in my blood work for a guy my age is about, I think the top end of the range is in the low 200s. Mine was in the mid 550s. So it was really, I was just elevated there for a long time. So cortisol is what kind of dismantles tissue. So, sorry, there wasn't a question, eh? Okay. Meds, for me, they eased off that adrenaline system. So I took SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So it masks the symptoms is what it does. It increases your serotonin levels and just kind of help ease that tightness of chest. Guided meditation, that was helpful. Just kind of to be aware of things in your body. That was good. I could do without some of the new age stuff, but it was really good in terms of just being aware of what's going on. LSD, not the psychedelic medication. I put it in for a joke. It is. So LSD stands for long, slow distance. So physical activity is really important, but the best, I like intense training, but that really ramps up your adrenaline system. LSD is long, slow distance. That's like a 5-hour walk. For me, it was hunting last fall. That was really, that's where it helped. It's like I would go for a hunt and I'd be out all day and I'd be hiking all day and just long, slow stalking. And it also stimulate the senses. We talk about wintertime being sort of that bluesy time of year. Find ways to stimulate the senses, like a big fire outside. Things to, again, stimulating that autonomic nervous system. For me, it was in June, and we have a spot at Lake Diefenbaker, and the kids were playing with a beach ball on the beach, and it was just quiet, and the ball went flying out into the lake, and it was kind of evening, and the water's still pretty cold, but it went out into the lake, and it was blowing away. I was like, oh, crap. Well, I guess I got to go get it. So I stripped down to my gotch, boxers, and dove in the lake and swam out there and came back, and I got it, and I got back to shore, and it was like, oh, I feel alive. So there's little signs like that happen. Prayer was helpful only in the long term, not in the short term. Anti-inflammatory, so aspirin did help a little bit for me. The other thing that helped me a little bit was the odd drink. That doesn't help work for everyone, because if there's harbored resentment, then that would be a bad decision. That's where kind of anger manifests itself. This is really important. You need a why. You need a why in terms of why I want to recover. For me, it was my kids. I wanted to be a great dad. And then the other one was possibility thinking. It's like, okay, this stage is over with, or this misalignment is over with, or this stage of my life is over with. But what are all the new possibilities in front of me? What are the things I can take on? And like short-term possibilities and long-term ones. I made a mistake of always like, Christmas is coming, and then I'm going to rest, and then I'll be okay. But it wasn't. January came, and it was like that winter we had 5 feet of snow by Christmas time. And I was out there shoveling every day, and the pile just kept getting bigger, and the next morning there'd be another pile, and that's what it felt like. It was just like the weather just mimicked exactly how I felt. So that possibility thinking. So I was looking too far forward. It's like, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys today. And then tonight I'm looking forward to bowling. And then tomorrow I'm looking forward to a drive home with Jericho. So just that possibility thinking. What are the other possibilities that are in front of you? What didn't work is restraining it, running from it. You can't. Like your alarm system's telling you something, and you got to let it hit you. It's like, again, a beach ball. Imagine you got this beach ball, it's floating on the water, and you're like, you don't want anyone to see this beach ball. And people are really good at hiding this. You don't want to see it, so you're going to take it and you're going to shove it under the water, you're going to hold it, brush it under. As soon as you let it go, it just like pops right back up. It resurfaces, it rebounds. It might even rebound harder than if it didn't get there. Diversion can, it's temporary, but it doesn't actually deal with it. Downplaying it don't work. I downplayed it, thought I could get supplements. It's like, oh, well, you're low in vitamin D, just take some of that. Or you're just throwing stuff at the wall. I need zinc and all this other stuff. Maybe that's true, but you're kind of just looking for something that might work. But if I've got a knee injury, I want to know I've got a torn ACL, not a torn meniscus, because I deal with those differently. I'm not going to just start taking supplements to make cartilage regrow. Or I want to know if I got a bone bruise. Okay, so that's why it's important to name it, and I'll talk about it a little later. The other one was tackling it alone. I tried to tackle this alone at first. Like I read books, and it took me a while to realize, shit, I got anxiety. I'm the last person this ought to happen to. And it's like, okay, I'm going to read books, I'm going to listen to podcasts, I'm going to tackle this alone, and I couldn't do it. I needed help. I needed help. Okay, so the recovery, it's this is what makes it hard. It's really slow, and it's not linear. This is where it's different than recovering from an injury. Maybe the best analogy for an injury to recover from would be like a back injury. It's just like back feels sore today, It feels sore tomorrow. It doesn't feel like it's ever getting better. Again, it's a nervous system injury. So yeah, I think there's some commonalities there. So you got to accept it. It's like, this happened. Don't fight it. Don't restrain it. And accepting it means you acknowledge it happened and it doesn't bother you anymore. And that's hard. I had to do it literally 1,000 times, multiple times a day. You just accept it. Then you got to name it. If you can name it, better. Like, what's that misalignment? Like, name it. Figure it out. That's the big one. Then you face it. You turn towards it. You can't restrain it. You got to let it run through. You got to let it hit you. Let it float right through. I don't cry, but I'll weep. One thing that makes me weep or kind of like tear up is when I see someone triumph. I just love it. Like that scene in School of Rock when that girl gets on stage and she starts singing at the end. Like, it's like, I still get teared up when I see that. But rather than fighting it, I just let it hit me. It's like, okay, it's happening. And then it kind of goes away. But don't try and restrain it. Don't try and fight it. You let it float through you. You got to face it. And then you got to let time pass. It's a long recovery. If you could imagine going for a hike from Calgary, Alberta to Lake Louise, Alberta, some sections are going to be flat. Then you're going to climb and you're like making progress. And then, oh shit, you get to Cochrane and then you got to go downhill for a ways. And you don't know why, but just you got to accept it. And then you start climbing again. But the general trajectory is up. Even though there's ups and downs along the way, the general trajectory is up. And you got to let that time pass. You know, that part about letting it hit you and let it run through you, that's the accepting part is hard, and the letting it hit you part is hard. There's a great movie I'll talk about here if you guys want to watch it. It's called Wind River. The main plot of the movie is an investigation of a murder on an Indian reservation in Montana. The subplot of the movie, though, is a guy doing an investigation lost his daughter. And he's investigating his friend's daughter's murder. And it's two dads letting it hit there. And there's a scene where the one dad says, you got to let it run through you. You got to let it hit you full on. Because if you don't, you're going to lose the rest of it. And I think it's a really great message for just letting it run through you. See, I even tear up a little bit, get emotional. So the understanding, ask how. I made a mistake of like, why is this happening? I don't get it. I'm the last person this should ever happen to. I'm full of energy. I try to love life. That wasn't helpful. The why will come later. It'll just be revealed to you. When I started to ask, like, how did this happen? That's kind of when it got through that process of stress recovery adaptation, the accumulation of unabated stress. So how did this happen? What's that misalignment? So I'm going to wrap it up. I think mental health, there's lots of people in this room that are dealing with it because I've talked to some of you. I bet you everybody in this room knows multiple people that have struggled or dealing with a struggle or with really serious consequences. So it is an injury, and it is like an illness. I think an injury in terms of the accumulation of that unabated stress and that misfire and that misalignment, that autoimmune disorder. It's really like an injury kind of to the soul, which is connected to your mind and body. So I think my goal here was to get beyond the just the awareness phase, a little bit into the understanding phase, and offer some encouragement for those that have got their own struggles. And so anyone wants to come and talk to me afterwards, say hey, or tell me what a loser I am, or just hey, talk privately. Like, I'm open to it. I think a question you can ask, sometimes we skirt the issue, and I've asked a few people about this, and I think if you've got the right level of rapport with somebody, I think you can ask them and you can sort of hit it head on, maybe with their permission, but you can just, we sort of say, the question I hated the most was, how are you? I hated that. Because like, do you really want to know? I feel like, but a question you could ask is, rather than just skirting it sometimes, you got to have rapport, at least their permission is like, how's your mental health? And I think that just gets to that talking out phase. I didn't talk to a psychologist. She was a social worker. She did a great job. She asked good questions, but it was just the talking out that helped. So I hope you guys all find that helpful. It affects a lot of people around us to serious consequences. And hey, I think, like I said earlier, welcome to the club. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I have no idea how long I went, but hope there's time